selling out the Forum. First Madison Square Garden, now the Forum. And he's doing it because the fans just want to see him in the ring, regardless of who he fights against.
Tom, obviously.
Dante's Boxing Nation.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So this footage you guys are watching right now, this was the media workout, Golovkin's media workout yesterday, recorded by my man Barbershop Conversations. Go ahead and subscribe to Barbershop Conversations channel. Help him get to 10,000 subscribers because he's almost there. With that all being said, Gennady Golovkin at the media workout, he has some interesting things to say about Daniel Jacobs. Matter of fact, he said one thing that the majority of critics and myself completely agree with, which is Danny Jacobs is Gennady Golovkin's toughest fight to date. Remember, Gennady Golovkin is 35 years old. He's either 34 going on 35 or he's 35, but he's in that ballpark. So let me go ahead and quote exactly what Golovkin had to say about Danny Jacobs. Quote, "Daniel, seriously, he has a good boxing style, good boxing IQ, he has power. I think for me, he's the best amateur from Brooklyn, from East Coast. He's a very good boxer. Right now, it's very serious, very interesting for me, not just for me, for us," end quote. Now listen, I'm not trying to bust my shoulder, pat myself on the back, but if you guys have been watching my channel for quite some time, then you know the majority of things that I've said about Gennady Golovkin and many other fighters have eventually come to fruition. When it comes to Golovkin, for example, way before he signed the contract to fight Kell Brook, I told you guys on this channel that welterweight, Kell Brook, is going to be Gennady Golovkin's most difficult fight to date. It's going to be his toughest fight. And Golovkin, he said exactly the same thing a week or the week before the fight. He said, "This is my toughest fight. This is my best opponent." And that's what I said. I said this is not only going to be his most difficult fight, but this is the best opponent that Golovkin has ever faced. And now here we are. Golovkin is saying the same thing, and I'm agreeing with him saying that. Now, and I know some of the decafs, they'll say, "Dante, how can that be his toughest fight when he knocked the guy out in the 5th round?" This is what the decaf will say, right? But this is what I will say to that. Do you know Deontay Wilder was in damn near the exact same scenario last weekend? That's right. Deontay Wilder, he knocked out Gerald Washington in the exact same round, which was the 5th round. And what does Deontay Wilder and Golovkin have in common? They both struggled. They were both losing on the majority of judges' scorecards before they technically knocked their opponent out. The only difference between Deontay Wilder and Golovkin is the fact that Deontay Wilder, he was actually facing someone 20 pounds bigger than him. And Golovkin was facing someone much smaller than him. Guys, can you imagine if Kell Brook was naturally 20 pounds bigger than Gennady Golovkin the night of the fight, like Gerald Washington was against Deontay Wilder? Can you imagine how that fight would have played out? Now, another difference between Golovkin and Deontay Wilder is, of course, Golovkin is far more skilled, far more technically sound than a Deontay Wilder, which is why this Golovkin fight is going to be a really, really entertaining fight for as long as it lasts against Danny Jacobs. No doubt about it, someone is getting knocked out in this fight. But what'll be interesting is for the first time, we don't know 100% sure if it's going to be Golovkin's opponent or Golovkin himself. I feel this is the type of fight where Golovkin can actually get hurt. Now, you see Golovkin, he was putting heavy emphasis on Danny Jacobs' IQ and his power, which tells me that Golovkin, he may go in there fighting more of a technical fight. If Golovkin goes in there fighting a technical fight, I feel that almost gives Danny Jacobs a better shot at winning this fight. Because I truly believe if Golovkin goes in there, everyone talked about how Golovkin boxed so well against David Lemieux. But David Lemieux was a short, flat-footed fighter that was afraid to punch, that had no defense. So, of course, just popping him with a jab, is going to work all night. No doubt about it. But if you try to implement that style against Danny Jacobs, then you give the masterful boxer a better chance to be comfortable in the ring. You're supposed to make a boxer uncomfortable. You're supposed to apply the pressure. This is when Golovkin started to do better against Kell Brook, regardless if his eye socket was broken or not. Golovkin wasn't extremely effective until he threw caution to the wind and he just jumped all over Kell Brook in that 5th round, which is why it doesn't make sense when you hear fans say, oh, well, the reason Golovkin got hit so much is because he didn't care about, Kell Brook's power and he knew he was too small to hurt him, so he was reckless in that fight. But see, that's not true. Because once again, if you pay attention, when Golovkin was fighting more cautious, that's when he was getting hit, okay? When Golovkin threw caution to the wind in that 5th round, that's when he got Kell Brook out of there. So when he threw caution to the wind in that fight, Golovkin actually did better, okay? So don't listen to the fans that say, oh, he just got hit so much because, he didn't care if he got hit or not. That's not true, okay? It's quite the contrary. When Golovkin was fighting reckless, he didn't really get hit at all against Kell Brook. But I believe in this fight right here, Golovkin will have to be intelligently aggressive. I don't think that he can beat Danny Jacobs in a chess match. I don't think that he can beat him in a chess match. He would have to be intelligently aggressive. And what Danny Jacobs would have to do is he would have to box circles around Gennady Golovkin. But every now and then, he would have to ambush Golovkin the same way he ambushed Peter Quillin. He would have to circle around the ring, kind of like Martin Murray did, which Martin Murray used foot movement and he was very effective. But then Danny Jacobs, he would have to ambush. He would have to jump on Golovkin with a flurry of punches, kind of like what Kell Brook did. I think a really good blueprint on how Danny Jacobs will have a good chance of beating Gennady Golovkin is, surprisingly, what Marco Antonio Rubio did to David Lemieux. When David Lemieux was undefeated, Marco Antonio Rubio, a fighter who was known for being aggressive, he boxed. He boxed Lemieux for at least the first half. He kind of broke him down psychologically, outboxing him. By the later rounds, Rubio, he was able to stand his ground and fight Lemieux more aggressively and eventually get Lemieux out of there. I think this is what Danny Jacobs is going to have to do. It's going to have to be in and out. I mean, once again, you can't be moving back. You got to be circling. You got to have great angles when you're fighting against Golovkin. But every now and then, you have to get Golovkin's respect by backing him up with a hard combination. So this fight will be really interesting, man. This fight will be really, really interesting. And I'll close with saying this. Gennady Golovkin, he is stepping in the right direction when it comes to competition and opposition. This is the best opponent on Gennady Golovkin's resume. And I believe that Golovkin, he is going to seek for better competition if he gets past Danny Jacobs, which is not going to be easy, or maybe it will be easy. We don't know. But I know Golovkin, he just said a couple days ago that, he intends on facing better competition this year or the beginning of next year. He says something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the gist of what he said. Once again, fans, you have to understand, the reality is the reality. You can get upset when people criticize Golovkin's competition, but the facts are the facts. We can argue if it's all Golovkin's fault or not. It may not all be Golovkin's fault that he hasn't faced the best competition, but it's certainly his fault that he didn't fight Andre Ward, which would have catapulted his career all the way to pound for pound top 3 status, maybe even number 1. Because if Golovkin was willing to move up and fight Carl Froch and Chavez at 168, but he didn't want to fight Ward at 168, I mean, you have to blame that on Gennady Golovkin. The fact that Golovkin didn't fight Lara, you would have to blame that on Golovkin. Now, the fact that he didn't get Canelo, you would have to blame that on Canelo. And that's where, it not being all of Golovkin's fault comes in, right? But everything that I have said about Gennady Golovkin, it has been backed with facts and numbers to prove it. So you can't say that it's hating, it's, just finding something bad to say about the man. No, we're simply talking about boxing. Do you know what the real definition of hating on someone is? The definition of hating on someone is when you attack them personally. Like calling someone gay weather, gay runner, oh, that fighter is boring, nobody wants to watch him, etc., etc., calling them racial slurs and all that kind of stuff, talking about their personal life. The reason why you don't like this boxer is because what he does outside of the ring, things that have nothing to do with boxing. That is the definition of hating on someone. That's the definition of hating someone in particular, right? Not just saying the facts, things that we know to be true. That's not hating on someone. On top of that, what's really crazy? Everything that I have said, you often hear professional boxers and trainers say. Matter of fact, let me give you a list of fighters and trainers and people in the boxing world that have basically corroborated everything that I said. And I know this because I interviewed the majority of them. But let me just read out some of these names. Matt Karabov, Nassim Hamed, Sergey Kovalev, Oscar De La Hoya, Robert Garcia, Adrian Broner, Julio Cesar Chavez, Paulie Ayala, Roy Jones, Jerry Cooney, Bernard Hopkins, the WBO president Mauricio Solomon, Teddy Atlas, Carl Froch, Anthony Joshua, Ruslan Provodnikov. And those are just names that I know, not every single name, that has criticized and pretty much said the exact same things that I've said about Gennady Golovkin. Just think about that and just ask yourself the question. And I'm talking to the decafs only right now. Just ask yourself the question. Why would all of these people that have been in the ring before and obviously have no personal agenda towards Gennady Golovkin, why would they all be saying pretty much the same things that you hear me say? There could only be one logical answer, and that is because it is the whole truth. Love without truth is hypocrisy. Truth without love is brutality. That's all I got, guys. I'm on to the next one.
Hi, you're watching DONTAE'S Boxing Nation.